6 Melbourne Terrafly runway heading, runway 5. Clear for takeoff.
From Psychic Sundays to E.T. Contact and everything in between, this is Spaced Out Sunday's Cosmic Passport with host Elizabeth Anglin.
Check it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Having a great show, guys. Smoke now.
You can connect with Elizabeth on Skype at 505-908-9558 and Spirit for Peace. Follow Liz on Twitter at Elizabeth Anglin and hashtag SpacedOutRadio. And you can connect with us on the web at spacedoutradio.com.
I feel the need for speed.
You feel it over and over again. We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again.
Chills, real now. Smoke off now.
This is the love we live again.
Chills, real now. Contact, contact. Easing up. Chills, real now.
Don't look much like Los Angeles to me.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. This is your host Elizabeth Anglin. I'm coming to you live not from Madrid, New Mexico, although I have been in a Spaced Out Radio Cosmic Cruise Mobile all day. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon this evening. Coming to you live from Portland, this is Elizabeth Anglin. I've just been at the Forest Moon Paranormal Conference, not concert, although we did sing a lot. And it was a wild and crazy weekend with Forest Moon Paranormal. Eric Cooper, Eric Markham, Mike Morin, the Spaced Out Radio crew were all there. Corey Graves, oh my goodness, Carrie Mingo, Go-Go Teresa was there, believe it or not. I don't want to out her, but she was there. Go-Go was there. It was good to see her. J.A. Kalskett was there from the SOR Space Travelers. Man, it was like the best reunion in the history of reunions. But before I tell you more about that, I want to welcome in everyone who's listening from around North America and the world, especially everyone who is listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on KTLK The Fringe. We especially want to thank our guitar god Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy, who creates the music that makes Spaced Out Radio Weekend Rock, the official spacedoutradio.com music. Thank you so much, Ron, for doing that for us. You can check us out on Twitter if you're a Twitter bug at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on radioguide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com, we have some cool offers for you, our listeners, there as well. Make sure you check those out. If you want to take part in the show tonight, we'd love to have people ask questions of our guests and sometimes the host. You'll have to sign in, though, to one of our chat rooms. If you go to spacedoutradio.com and you go to listen to our show live on Spreaker, you can go into the chat room there, free for nothing, or you can sign into the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. If you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. We offer some pretty decent stuff for you, our valued listener, and it's our opportunity to get back to you, which we like to do. We like to give. Please check out our news section, The Encounter, that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editor, Eric Markham, and you can check out Dave Scott's latest blog there as well. If you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researchers are ready to help you find out what's going on. And again, we want to thank everybody listening on terrestrial radio, WQEE 99 Rock the Key. We want to welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. And if I sound tired, it's because I've been road tripping with crazy paranormal people at the Forest Moon Paranormal Conference this weekend, which was ever so much fun. I cannot tell you how much fun it was. That being said, I want to go ahead and welcome in Nathan, Arizona, who is, well, I'm going to get back to Forest Moon Paranormal at the top of the hour, but I want to welcome in Nathan, Arizona, who's a young man I met in 2015 at the International UFO Conference in Arizona, and he just struck me as somebody who was going to get it. He was searching for the mystery. He was going to be searching for the mystery for a long time. He was going to go seek his own experiences. He had been to Dulce at that time. He had really interesting things to say about it. And since then, he's gone out on his own, and he started the Utah UFO Festival. He's also gone out to check out the Aztec crash site. He is, he's just doing it. So, without much further ado, Nathan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, you've been all over the place looking for UFOs in the past year, and you've had a lot of experiences that go beyond the alien and the UFO, and I'm so happy to have you on the show. I'm so happy to introduce you to our listeners who are mainly experiencers of the mystical kind, the paranormal kind, the fairy kind, the alien kind, contactees, and more. So thank you so much for coming on. You just went out on a big expedition last weekend, right?
We actually had to cancel.
Oh, that's too bad.
You know, we had visibility issues, and we were going to be looking off of Tikaboo out inside the base there, but because of some of the wildfires and some weather problems, we weren't able to. We wouldn't have had the required visibility because it's still 26 miles into the base, so
right.
It has to be perfectly clear out there to actually see inside the base there. But we're going to be heading back out there possibly in November.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good, and hopefully you'll get better weather for that. Now, given that, that didn't happen last week, I wish it had, I'd like to let people know a little bit more about you. You're from Utah.
Yeah, I'm from southern Utah. I spend a lot of time outside of the state, though. In the summertime, I'm actually in New Mexico quite a bit. I spend a lot of time down around the borderlands, down along the U.S.-Mexican border. And I travel all over as often as I can. I try to be on the road as often as I can. I go out to a lot of Indian reservations and a lot of Native American communities. And are you still there, Elizabeth?
Yes, I am.
You cut out there for a second. Sorry, I just got some kind of white noise or something.
Oh dear.
Anyways, so I'm just constantly trying to stay busy, stay focused, working towards goals, especially with the fest that we're developing out here. We finally got a little bit of a small army coming together every year, so we're trying to, build this festival. We just had our second annual event, which tripled in size, and so it was pretty popular this year. And we had like 23 sponsors, and the community came together, and we had both private and corporate sponsors that helped out with the event. And the festival was completely free to the public, so we're not really seeking to gain anything or profit from this event. We just want to get the discourse going, especially here in Utah, where we live in a sort of a bubble here, and we're kind of trying to change that a little bit for the better.
Okay, well that's great. So where in Utah does this festival take place?
It happens down in Cedar City, which is about 2.5 hours north of Las Vegas if you're heading north on I-15, Interstate 15. And it's a great little town. We have about 30,000 people here. We have a super Walmart center, which is not that big of a deal, but it's a big box center, and we have it's a small community. We have a university here, which is Southern Utah University. We're also known as the Festival City. We have quite a prominent Shakespearean festival here, where we have a lot of local performing arts going on during the tourism season. And we have also the largest cluster of national parks right here in Southern Utah. So if you've never been to Zion National Park or Bryce Canyon, this is kind of the gateway to some of those really colorful national parks. So, we're just hip and a skip away from those places. So it's a great place. We're right on the cuff of Canyon Country, and west of us is the Great Basin. So it's high desert. We're about 6,500 feet above sea level. So it's nice, pleasant weather in June. It's not terribly hot. It does get hot, but this year we had our event at a place called Three Peaks Recreation Area, which is out on BLM land. But this year we're actually moving the event into town, so it will be down in downtown Cedar City, City, Utah.
How many people came last year?
Well, it was just a mini one evening event. It was our inaugural event, so we only had about 300 people first year. The second year, our count has been closer to 1,000 on the second year. So, about 2/3 of the crowd traveled from out of town, out of state to come to the event, and we had about 1/3 of the crowd that was right here from Cedar City. So, we're trying to turn this little Mormon town, into a UFO colony.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you got 1,000 people, and 2/3 of them were from out of state or out of town. Who do you have coming up to speak? Have you picked your speakers yet?
Yeah, there are some in the pipeline that I haven't publicly announced. I haven't negotiated anything with them yet. We have Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell. He's coming to present. He's a filmmaker. We have Erica Lukes.
Oh,
we're gonna have her present at the event. I have an individual. I can talk about him a little bit, but he's never been like officially come out publicly. He's a very knowledgeable, very experienced. I guess you could call him a contrary, or in some cultures he could be referred to as like some sort of sacred clown or whatnot. But he's native. He's Anishinaabe. He's Chippewa. He says there's a lot of misconceptions about the UFO phenomenon, and he wants to kind of set the record straight. So he's going to be presenting. I've invited him. He reached out to me though, and I thought he had a unique perspective, I've been following some of his posts and some of his work on Facebook. He's doesn't like to be known as anyone special. He doesn't like to be on a pedestal. He calls out a lot of people that are always seeking some sort of self promotion or whatever. So he's just a normal guy, but he's got a lot of extraordinary things to teach people about. So I'll respect his identity right now, but though, because I'm waiting to I'm still working on a few last details with him before we can put him on the announcement. I have also Phoenix MUFON coming. Stacy Wright and Jim Mann from Phoenix, they will be coming up here to present as well. So that's our lineup so far. It's inconclusive. Like I said, we have some more keynotes to be announced, but I'm waiting to, get some stuff ironed out before we can go public with those. So I know that Ron Regier, you know him?
I don't. Tell me about him.
Ronald Rieger, he's a aerospace engineer. He's in a lot of ways he's a skeptic, but he was with Bob Lazar when they were going in the desert. John Lear and Bob Lazar when they were going out in the desert, looking at those, seeing some of those craft before, some of those test craft before they went public with George Knapp, before he went on Channel 8 News with George Knapp. So that's, he was presenting this year, and I think he's going to be putting together a venue for the event as well. So we're like a grassroots event, which means we're not as static, we're not as fixed in our format as some of these other, kind of commercial ventures in the UFO niche. We're kind of more of a let's change our culture, let's change humanity type of movement. And I think we have to keep this either low cost or extremely, just keep it flat out free, because I want people to be able to come to an event like this where they can't usually afford to go to another event. Some of these events run into the, $100 or more dollars, and a lot of low income American families can't afford to be enriched and enlightened by this topic when it's so cost prohibitive. And we need to open this up to humanity in such a way that people can make a pilgrimage to an event like this, and they can exchange information and network. And in my opinion, it's much more grassroots that way. It's much more in touch with our human nature that way, and I think it will grow and sustain itself as a result of that if we put enough sweat and hard work into it, and make it about community engagement and not so much about making money. I need to be making money, but we're a 501c3. I'm not really out to make money with the UFO Fest, and that's been my biggest struggle so far. But the work that's involved with this, I think, is important enough that we need to start getting beyond the money factor. We need to start. We all need to survive and make money because we live in Western culture, and it dictates that we're economic wage slaves in some way or another. But at the same time, I think if we're ever going to bring about a massive conscious change to, especially when fighting the stigma associated with this phenomenon, I think we have to make it a little bit more accessible to people who, the surprising thing is a lot of people have been coming to our event. It's their first time that they've ever been to any sort of UFO event or anything like that. So it's a completely new experience to them, and we're actually Utah's first real UFO festival that's anything like this. They've tried to do things in the past, but they weren't really that successful. So, some of the events that they tried to build in the past were up there in Salt Lake, but a lot of people didn't realize that this would do so well in a small cattle ranching community like Cedar City. And we're quite a conservative town, so it kind of accentuates that strong conservative stint. We're kind of out there a little, and I think that's why it's so successful here in Cedar City, because it seems to be attracting a lot of attention. We've had some TV producers looking into our our event, and I think it's because we're Mormons here in the bubble. I think it kind of there's kind of a wow factor, kind of a charm, I guess. It kind of fascinates people, being that we're an event that's right smack dab in the middle of Mormon country.
That would be, being right smack dab in the Mormon country has got to be intense. I think, I mean, I think a lot of people in Canada and across the U.S. and in Australia who are listening, and other places around the world, we have listeners from all over the world, maybe don't understand what it means to do this in Mormon country. And are you comfortable speaking a little bit about that?
I will take it to the limit. I'm completely fine with that.
Okay.
I've been stirring controversy in my own community here. It's pretty crazy.
So what's happened with that? I mean, you grew up Mormon, you grew up in Utah, you grew up in pretty conservative Utah, right? Isn't southwestern Utah pretty conservative? Yes. And how did you become interested in this?
Well, that's a long story, but my family's been dealing with. We've been in business where we've traded art, and my grandpa was in the business of trading art with, a lot of First Nations peoples, Native Americans like Pueblos and Navajos, and so I grew up around a lot of different cultures, and I think that helped me kind of break out of the whole Utah bubble a little bit. They would come up here to Utah from Santa Fe, and I'd often play with their kids when I was a kid, and I grew up around a lot of these people, and it's a long story, but I've had a lot of experiences in my life that I think at first I didn't really associate with UFOs, but I guess you could say I had my own crazy horse experiences out in the hills, and I had my own Joseph Smith moments, kind of like Joseph Smith did, the Mormon prophet that supposedly saw Jesus and God out in the forest out there in New York. I tend to think he was just having a special experience, and then something, the church grew from that. But I think a lot of us humans, when we go out in the hills by ourselves, we're exposed to the elements like that, to the environment. I think there's intelligences out there that can see a potential in an individual, and maybe they can see as pliable. And being the young kid that I was at the time, I was like 16, 17 years old, and I grew up with my grandpa filling my head with lost gold mine stories about Spanish coming up here into Utah, and you would think he was a crackpot, other than the fact that he actually discovered a gold mine here in southern Utah called Gold Strike, and he actually staked a claim there, and it was based on some 16th century Spanish diggings that he found down here. So he had those when he was prospecting that area. He discovered gold there, and everyone in his hometown of St. George, Utah, thought he was crazy. And he had those samples assayed, and they contained gold, and he didn't have the money to develop the mine, so he ended up leasing the claims to Tenneco, who came in and open pitted it. And so you could understand that I was growing up around this, and he was kind of filling my head with these gold stories. And I think from really early on, I started having gold fever, this infection of greed in my outlook, even as a teenager. And so I would go off in the hills alone by myself, looking for these riches or these treasures. And I would say it was kind of a mental illness in a way. It was kind of like a mental sickness, this fever. And I loved my grandpa and his stories. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I don't think the whole gold, lusting after gold, looking for that sort of greed, suffering from that sort of greed was a good thing and stuff. So over time, I started having these experiences that I couldn't scientifically explain or logically explain. And in the church, in the LDS church, we're taught that you can tell the difference between good and evil. There's a saying that says, "By their fruits ye shall know them." And when I started having some of these paranormal experiences, they were changing me for the better. They cured me of that gold fever. They kind of helped me to evolve into the photographer and the artist that I am today. So, I had these experiences that were incredible, and I don't know how else to describe them. So, but later on, around 2013 and 14 is when I started seeing strange things in the sky, and and since then I've begun to connect the dots as to where I'm at right now, and I've determined that I've probably always been on this UFO road. It's just going out to all these native communities and going to all these places trying to interpret what I was dealing with. It was in some ways it was so codified. And is that the right? Did I say that right, or is it codified? I think it's codified.
I think it's codified, and
Yeah.
yeah, and what's interesting is that some people believe, and I've heard that there is a kind of UFO connection with Mormonism, that there are stories of UFOs and Mormons. Is that your understanding, or is that just a misinterpretation?
It might be a misinterpretation because I'm running into a lot of people that there's a serious stigma in the Mormon bubble against this whole topic, and I don't know what's causing that. Individually, a lot of Mormons have shared a lot of stories with me. A lot of Mormon ranchers down here, they are out there cutting alfalfa in the middle of the night down here in Utah, and they see things in the skies. And you would be surprised. There is actually quite a few conservative, politically conservative leaning folks that have seen stuff that they can't explain. And so there are people who have seen things in the sky. They're open-minded about it. It's the people that don't pay attention to the skies that are kind of like the ones suffering from the stigma. But it's polarized across the board. They're either very supportive of it or they don't want nothing to do with it. But there seems to be a cultural stigma that takes some warming up to before people will finally start seeing that it's cool and that it's something that they want to open up about. I think a lot of people want to do it, but they're afraid of what other people are going to think of them. Maybe in some places like New Mexico, where it's been kind of in the open discourse for so long, it's not like this. But Utah, we were literally kind of like virgin territory here when we decided to go forward with this and start walking the walk every year.
That's really very interesting to me. My only two Mormon friends are interested in UFOs and have had interesting spiritual and otherworldly experiences. And one is a friend, she's female, who had an experience quite like I did when she was a young woman, where she was abducted for several days and she lost her job because she didn't go into work. And then she went back to work a few days later, and of course she had been fired because she was coming in on the wrong day. And she had been just missing and hadn't called in, hadn't done anything. And I'd never heard anybody that say that before. She was the only one. And so, my when you say it, people are generally against it, it's talking about it because there's a stigma. You two are some of the people I know who talk most openly about it, and maybe that's because you have somebody to talk about it with, because I'm willing to listen. But
Yeah.
I've loved to hear your stories. Now, you talk about having friends from Santa Fe come up and from New Mexico. Did they have any similar stories that you feel comfortable sharing?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head. I think my upbringing, though, my grandfather had a very open mind about ET and UFOs, and so I think his intuition there was a connection there that was pretty strong. I didn't start hearing those stories and those interpretations until I let a lot of my native colleagues that are in some of these native communities, peers or whatever you want to call them, friends, they didn't really discuss this stuff with me until I wound up on the UFO road. And then not only was I sharing them some of the visions and the experiences I had from going out in the hills, but I started relaying the ET piece of the puzzle. And I've gotten a lot of mixed. I've gotten some mixed answers and interpretations of what I'm dealing with, from a cultural standpoint. But that's been pretty limited. I have, as I've gone out to a lot of these communities around the Southwest, a lot of the people over in Taos Pueblo, they've shared a lot of the, from the individuals that I've talked to, they've been very open-minded, and they've shared some of their personal experiences with me, just stories. And I've heard stories from people that are out in Jemez, and I've been out to the Hopi mesas, and I've heard some of their perspectives. And I have to tell people to be careful when they're talking to anybody who's not native, who doesn't come from these communities but claims to have a special connection to those communities, because in my opinion that's kind of like cultural exploitation, I guess. Nobody has a special relationship to the Hopi who are not from those communities. I don't care who they are. I'm not trying to target anybody here. I've just noticed this in some of the UFO circles here in the UFO niche. I would never claim to have special connections to the elders. Sorry, I don't mean to be sarcastic here. It's just, it gets annoying because I've seen some of these types in the UFO niche, and prior to winding up on the UFO road, I spent about a decade as part of various organizations that went after those kind of people that were misrepresenting and stealing culture. And I've been involved with a lot of Native American rights and, countering colonialism and kind of educating my community and the people around me about that. Before I wound up on the UFO road, I was kind of a social activist. I was doing that before it became trendy and cool, and I was an activist. And so I was always about, I used to stand outside of the box and say, that I wasn't a part of the problem. And then I came to realize that I am a part of the problem, and I'm not better than the ignorant people in my community. Even though I have more knowledge, it means I have more responsibility to, teach people about my experiences that I've had, just from learning how to decolonize a little bit. And I look at this phenomenon more through a decolonized lens. I'm not the Western cultural Nathan that I was 10 years ago, because I learned how to break those windows and kind of start seeing things through a decolonized fashion. So I look at this phenomenon more from a decolonized point of view, something that's predating our Western culture and influence, especially here in the Southwest. I'm seeing this from so many of the different cultural outlooks that I've, exchanged, conversations I've had with people. So my outlook is slowly being shaped by the perspectives of other people, of friends that, see things differently than I do, and stuff. So
that's good. I mean, and that's important. I think, in my lifetime, what's happened is, as a UFO experiencer, I did have some memories of past lives, and one where I was Native, actually multiple where I was Native, and I've been other things other than Native American. Multiple came up, and there can be this thing where you feel for a while that you want to know about those cultures, but in knowing about those cultures, you can take advantage or basically just get led astray. So I agree with you that, if you're not actually Native, don't try to pretend to be. Even if you maybe once were and you're missing that particular lifetime or that particular industrial revolution, nomadic lifetime and freedom and, connectedness with the earth. Please don't try to become Native if you're not.
Yeah.
But
That's a light chuckle.
I went through my time period of really wanting to learn about it. And I have, there are nice people that I know. We have old hippies in Madrid who actually did go to Hopi on the magic bus and did talk to one of the elders who said, "Hey, you're the long-haired white guys we've been waiting for," and and that's their biggest claim to Hopi, which is, we went. They talked to us. They said, "Hey, you're the long-haired white guys."
You know what's crazy is people tend to claim this mystical.
I think that's relatively innocent. But other than that, don't go writing books where you shouldn't be, etc. We had a question from the Spreaker chat room from Joe, and he wants to know, going back to Area 51 and Mormons and Dugway, there's some talk going on about Area 51 either being moved to Dugway or expanded to Dugway. What are your thoughts on that? Can you move closer to your mic?
Yeah, can you still hear me?
I can barely hear you.
What about right now? That's weird.
I can still barely hear you.
How about now? I might have to take my mic off. Let me take off my headphones.
Okay.
Can you hear me better now or worse?
It's very iffy. Eric, can you hear him? Nope. It's very iffy. Try your cord and see if you can make some adjustments.
Does that sound better?
Nope. You're really, really getting softer and softer.
Okay, testing it still. Hold on, give me a second. Can you hear me better now?
Nope.
So it just barely started falling off?
Yep, all of a sudden you just dropped off to almost nothing.
What about now?
Oh, okay. Well, I can't hear him, so I don't know what he's going to be talking about. Sorry, chat room people. If I can't hear him, I can't interview
Elizabeth,
him.
can you hear me now?
No, not very well. Chat room can hear you, but I can't, so there's something going on there. Hold on a second.
Is it on my end or is it on your end?
Okay, chat room people, we don't mean to have dead air. I'm going to see if I can change
Can you hear me now?
on Skype for myself. Nope.
Elizabeth, I can hear you. Can you still hear me, Elizabeth?
Very faintly.
Hello?
Very faintly.
It's funny how that all happened right when you start talking about Dugway.
Yeah, it's the Dugway folks. They just don't want us talking about it. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Not very well.
That's I don't know.
It's me.
This thing has always worked flawless for me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little muffled, but I can hear you just fine.
Wait.
Technical difficulties.
Okay. All right. So, folks, hang on for a little bit. Nathan, I'm gonna drop you off and recall you, and we'll talk a little bit. We're about to talk about what's going on with Area 51 in Dugway. Nathan, I'm gonna hang up on you and I'm gonna call you back. And folks, I'm gonna keep talking while I do that, because I really want to know whether or not Nathan knows if we have Area 51 has moved over to Dugway. So we're going to call him back, see if we can get him, at least so I can hear him. I thank everybody who has been letting me know from Skype what's going on with that.
Can you hear me now?
No, I'm having issues with my Skype.
It's probably the hotel then.
It could be. Yes, it looks like my Wi-Fi is very, very small. So go ahead and answer, and I'll listen very carefully. And we'll
do you want me to
call
back on the iPhone?
No, I think maybe I will try your phone. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
We'll see if we can get you on your phone.
Okay.
Okay. Just trying one more thing for Nathan. Yes, we do want to get this. So, okay, some people think the audio sounds fine. Unfortunately, I can't hear him myself, so that's an issue for me. Nathan. We're just trying to get it so that I can hear him.
We're cool. I'm cool.
Hey Nathan, can you PM me your number again? Because now I'm trying to go through all this stuff.
Yeah, let me pull up my browser real quick. I was closing programs, see if that was causing any.
So just PM it, and then I'll call you back on it. All right. So Nathan's going to PM me his number, and then we'll try him back on it. I am so sorry for this technical difficulty, but it does happen from time to time. If you can PM me on Facebook, Nathan, that'd be great. With your phone number. Okay. All right, I'm going to try him again, folks. Just 1 second here. And we're going to get Nathan, Arizona, back on the phone with us, hopefully in a way that we can hear him, or I can hear him. When we do, we're going to hear about Dugway and what's going on with Area 51. Just 1 second here. No, it is not going to let me do that. I don't need Skype credit. Okay. Sorry, folks. No, that's not working either. I'm having huge issues with my own Skype.
Hello?
Hey, Nathan. So this is,
Yeah.
this is a Skype issue. It looks like my settings, or the lowness of the Wi-Fi here is not allowing me to hear you, but other people can hear you. So why don't you go ahead and tell folks about what you know about Dugway and Area 51, and then I'll just listen as best I can.
Okay, there's a lot of I've been out to both places quite a bit. I have to give Dave Rosenfeld credit for going out to Dugway more, though. He's been helping us with our festival. He's a good guy. And so when it comes to Dugway, I'd have to say Dave Rosenfeld's been out there more than I have. I have camped out there at Dugway plenty of times. I've seen some strange stuff out at Dugway. I saw what looked like the purple laser going up through the clouds out there. And I was doing some research online trying to figure out what I had seen out there, and there was speculation that they're testing these anti-satellite weapons out there at Dugway, maybe that could take a satellite out of the atmosphere. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I couldn't make sense of what I saw out there. But I don't think they've necessarily moved everything from Area 51 over to Dugway. It doesn't, I've looked into that myself. I've tried to research that myself. And if they have, they've done a pretty good job at hiding that.
Okay. I mean, the
restrictions out of Dugway are not, the security out of Dugway is not near as high as Area 51 is even today. I've been out to Area 51 about 7 times over the last month, which I don't usually go out that often, but this summer I've been spending a lot of time out there driving along the boundary. It's to the point where the camel guys actually wave at me when I'm out there. So it's like, I'm very respectful when I go out there. I don't try to make their job more difficult, and I think they've got an idea that I'm pretty respectful, because I know that they don't know what's going on. They're just doing their job.
Right.
So I'm kind of I'm kind of uncool with these guys trying to generate these YouTube videos who are going out there and trying to stir controversy with these guys, making their job more difficult. That's not that cool that those people do that on the YouTube just to get the views coming in.
Right.
But I take friends out there and I take groups out there, and I've spent a lot of time out there myself, and I've got this weird connection to Area 51. Something I hesitate to talk about. I might have to talk about it. Maybe one of these days I could talk about it on the air, but I've got it. Yes.
Come on, you've mentioned it now, and now everybody wants to know, and almost everybody here is an experiencer. So this is you're not going to get hecklers or trolls listening to this show. So come on now, what is it?
It's I hesitate to say this because it's so far out there. I just back in 2000, I'm going to have to tell a story here if we go down this rabbit hole.
Let's go.
Can you hear me all right now?
I can hear you fine. Yes, okay. I can hear. Okay.
So, let me just give you a quick rundown, chronological rundown here, a little bit of a history. In 2009, 2010, I was organizing pro-immigration rallies up here in Utah. I don't know if you remember State Bill 1070, where they were, there was a bill in Arizona that would allow highway patrolmen to pull over anybody who looked brown, and if they didn't have papers, they could arrest them or cite them on site. Do you remember that bill? It was like an anti-immigration bill. Yes. I was organizing these immigration rallies down in when was how the government negatively reacted to that revelation by threatening people in the armed forces and the military and the Air Force and the Navy that they could be court-martialed if they went to the WikiLeaks website and actually looked at any of those embassy cables. That's what got me motivated to do that. And that was 2011. Around 2012, I was out on Grand Staircase National Monument, and I don't know if I should talk about this, but I was in the commission of committing a felony out there by stealing Moki marbles off of a federal monument because I could sell them making money, right? Mm-hmm. And I knew where they were because most of my business has been selling rock to rock shops and trading stone with native stone carvers for over a decade. And when I could get $7 a pound for these, that's what drove me to go out there. And I had a guilty conscience. I had a U-Haul trailer with me. And I'm saying this on the air because I have to tell this story so you guys can make a connection here. I witnessed a crime out there, and I can't talk about that, and I won't, especially on the air. But I was so scared from what I had witnessed out there that I was in the BLM parking lot that morning at the Escalante field office for Grand Staircase National Monument, and I told them what I had seen, and I came clean with what it was I was doing out there. And the guy that was working out there as a law enforcement officer, his name was Jeff Lauersdorf, and he'd been a backcountry ranger out there for 17 years. And I told him what had happened, and he wanted to know why I had a U-Haul trailer attached to the back of my Jeep and why I was driving around on a national monument like that. And that's when I told him the truth. I said, look, I was thinking about doing this, but I never did. And he says, well, you never did, so technically it's not illegal for you to drive a U-Haul trailer out in the Grand Staircase National Monument. And, but if I had stolen Moki marbles off of a federal monument, that's like, you might as well go rob a bank. So because the severity of the crime is about the same. And so I came back home here completely shook up by this. Jeff Lauersdorf told me that there were going to be a couple federal agents that would be coming to my house in a couple months, and I completely forgot about that. And then, those couple months went by, and to make a long story short, these guys did show up at my door. I don't know if it's okay to name names on the air here. I don't know if it's wise to do that.
Not wise. Just say the guy showed up at your door. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the guy showed up at my door. It was him. It was an interagency federal agent from both the NSA, the National Security Agency, right, and the Department of the Interior. I didn't know there was such a special agent, but Jeff told me that he was going to get me in touch with this guy because this guy could do a lot more than he had the jurisdiction to do. He could pull more strings. And so I didn't know why they wanted to send a federal agent to my house to dig deeper into this, but when they showed up to my house, I didn't realize that they had talked to my parents, they had talked to my employer, they had talked to some of the professors that teach classes that I'm in, but they had done their homework, and they wanted to recruit me. They took me to Starbucks for breakfast, and the creepy thing is when this guy opened up his briefcase, he was a short Asian dude that was the main federal agent there. He didn't even look like a federal agent. And when these guys showed up at my door, they looked like guys out mowing their lawn in the morning wearing flip-flops. I mean, it was completely sneaky, you know, in a way. But I went to breakfast with them. He pops open his briefcase, and he had a manuscript of my Facebook that was like, you know, it had highlighted all these areas where he had researched me on Facebook. And so they'd done their homework on me before they even showed up. And basically what they wanted to do is they wanted me to go undercover working for them as, I guess, someone gathering intelligence for them. I was going to go to these rock shops and go to all these places, and guess what I was going to sell?
What?
Seized artifacts, seized Moki marbles, seized petrified wood that they were going to provide to me. And I was going to do this undercover.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, you know what? You know, what really scared me was the amount of money that they were offering me to take this job. And you know what? I talked to my mom after they had given me this offer, and she compared the situation to that lamb on Jurassic Park where it comes out of the ground, out of a cage, hooked to a chain, and the T-Rex comes and eats it. I was that lamb on the chain. So it's like we could already see where this was going. And, you know, I didn't take the job, but the guy that was with this other agent was from the state of Utah. He was a postal inspector for the state of Utah, and his job was to sit on eBay and look for illegal artifacts popping up on eBay.
Okay,
so
we're gonna cut you off right there, and we're gonna go on with the story after the break. I'm sorry I got you started because it's like, oh, now we have to hear the end of it, but we also have to get our breaks in. This is Elizabeth Anglin talking to Nathan, Arizona on Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com. Thank you for listening. We're going to go into a break right now, and we'll see you on the other side of 7 minute stretch.
And visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together we own the night.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Elizabeth Anglin and SOR.
And we're back on Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. This is your host, Elizabeth Anglin. I'm coming to you live with our special guest, Nathan Arizona, who has been working with the Utah UFO Festival in the small town of Cedar City, Utah, which he's grown it up to be quite a big event. He was just telling us about his experiences with the federal government and being out in the desert in southern Utah and seeing something he shouldn't have seen and getting pulled over to the side. But before he goes back to that, I want to quickly give thanks to all the folks who are listening to us from WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia. Everyone who is coming to us around North America and the world at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on KTLK, The Fringe. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you are a Twitter bug, you can check us out at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn and download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. So we're back with Nathan Arizona. He's going to continue on with his story about what happens when you see things you shouldn't see, when you're doing things you shouldn't do in the Utah desert. So you basically were the goat the T-Rex was about to munch. How'd you get out of this?
I'm going to try to shorten the story a little bit just so I can get to the punch of why I even told the story to begin with. But the thing is I knew about Operation Fast and Furious, and for those of you who don't know about that, that's when our government was under the Obama administration and under Eric Holder, who was the Attorney General. They were somehow allowing the DEA to do money laundering for the cartels, as well as trafficking guns and ammunition down to from my knowledge, to the Sinaloa cartel. So, when I didn't take this job, I brought up that issue with these agents, and I says, I can't work for the feds because, you guys want me to lie to my family, you want me to lie to my friends, you want me to lie to the people I do business with, and it's great you're offering me a job, but I just can't do this. It's not noble for me to do it, and the working for the feds is a questionable employer. So I could work for maybe the state, but not the federal government. I just knew too much about too many of these discrepancies that I wouldn't be able to work for this employer with a clear conscience. And anybody, I don't think the government's necessarily a bad thing. There are good people that work in the government. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one to demonize the entire federal government, but they have some bad apples running in the, who are high up. And it scares me sometimes to even dwell on that. But, let me just jump ahead. When I didn't take that job and I didn't follow through on the first job that they tried to assign me, my business was literally sabotaged with the people that I work with, that I do business with. It took a lot of cleanup work to clean up the damage that they caused when I wouldn't take the job. So I'm just going to leave it there. So we're going to jump ahead now a couple of years. It was in 2013 that I saw UFOs in the Nevada desert on a extraterrestrial highway. That's a long story in of itself. But let me just make a connection here. I tend to think that what I saw out in Nevada may have been manufactured artificially in order to motivate me to create the Utah UFO Fest. And that might be off-putting to some people, but if you think about this, there seems to be a strange connection with my experience of running into the feds, getting this job offer, having this history of social activism, putting these rallies together that would lead me to have the kind of skill set, I guess, and the experience in walking the walk and, community engagement in order to get a festival like this off the ground. So this is where I start diving into the paranormal. Are you still there, Elizabeth? I just want to make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
You're good. Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, let me make a connection here. So I've had these dreams and these experiences, and in 2015, I was told by Yvonne Smith that my personal experiences, seemed like the classic symptoms of someone who is a contactee or an experiencer. And the more she started telling me about myself, the more it kind of startled me that she had answers for me that nobody else had answers for when I've been seeking those answers for like a decade. So I had gone through all this, and this whole time that I had all these experiences, I was being I misinterpreted what I was dealing with from a religious standpoint as being some sort of evil darkness, something satanic even. And when she revealed to me what it was I was dealing with and told me to surrender to this energy, this power, this energy, that's the best way for me to describe it. She said that I would experience some, incredible things that might help me, and it did. After I took her advice and succumbed to this and surrendered to this, I was able to literally open up these portals that have taken me clean out of reality. And, this is stuff that you might hear from someone who's been tripping on some sort of drug or hallucinogen, but I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I've never smoked, never drank, and I've never done any sort of drug. Yet I'm having these experiences that happen on a consistent basis, and it's happening at such a consistency that it's almost like scientific. Because if you can repeat something through a certain set of steps and you achieve the same exact effect every time, you know that there's either something biological going on there, or there's something that's physically going on there that science has not been able to prove yet. So I know that some of my personal experiences related to this phenomenon are real. I hesitate to share those details on the air, but one thing I do think is pertinent is I think, and this is just going on my experience as a so-called contactee, but I think that when Uncle Sam or when these feds, when they find out that you have been in any sort of contact like this, they become just as interested in intercepting that as anybody, I think. And I can't help but think they had some sort of knowledge about me prior to me walking the walk, and doing all this stuff. And I'm just connecting the dots here. There's still so much I don't know, but
do you think that you might be a MyLab or a Rehab experiencer, where you may have had some alien-related experiences and then some government experiences? Exactly. Okay.
You know who helped me interpret that a little bit better when I was trying to make sense of it, though? I don't know if you know Mr. Joe Montaldo.
I haven't met Joe, and I've had several people say, "Yeah, do you know Joe?" And I'm like, "Oh, not Joe Montaldo. No."
He's a good guy. I took him out to Area 51. We ended up having an experience out there where we had missing time. All this stuff is happening so frequent in my life. It's no longer a mystery to me in some ways. But I've learned so much since meeting you, Elizabeth. It's amazing because, I'm making sense of my reality when I've been, for a whole decade, I was trying to find some of those answers by networking in these Native communities, and even their interpretation of the phenomenon was so limited in the context of my personal experiences that I didn't know how to make a connection through any sort of cultural interpretation of it. I liked hearing it, but it never really helped me personally it's if you remember the old Egyptian story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. Remember when he was cast in the pit, biblically speaking, because his brothers hated him because he was the most loved son of their father, and he had this gift to interpret dreams in the ancient Bible. Remember that story?
Yes, I remember that story.
Okay, so Joseph the king in that story, in that old biblical story, had these visions that he could not interpret, that he could not find a meaning for, and it was plaguing him because he didn't know the definition of or the interpretation of his dreams. And it wasn't until Joseph, in Egypt came along, was able to interpret those dreams because he had this godly divinity this divine gift from God to decipher these mysterious dreams that the king was having. And the king made Joseph a powerful leader there in Egypt. That's kind of, I felt like the king in so many ways with some of these experiences that I've had. I haven't been able to make sense of them. And I'm going to tell a story here that jumps right into the UFO aspect of this. So in 2013, I'm going to share a personal story here that I don't think under normal circumstances, or in the past I would share on any show or radio, but I'm going to share it right now. I believe it was 2013 when I had this. It was December. I was teaching my friend photography, who's a nursing student at Southern Utah University, and we were supposed to go to a place over by Page, Arizona, known as Horseshoe Bend. It's a famously photographed, world-famous landmark where the Colorado Plateau bends around in a horseshoe shape around this rock formation. It's the top of the Grand Canyon, and we were going to go out there. It's like a 3-hour drive from my hometown here in Cedar City, and we were supposed to head out there so he could practice his photography. And that night it started to blizzard, it started to snow, and about 12:30 at night, while I was asleep, I had this vision. And I have a history of sleepwalking, and I started sleepwalking in this vision. And I was aboard a spaceship. And I had been on a metal table in a spaceship in this dream. And I remember hearing this massive, what sounded like a warp drive or an engine in the center of this craft. And I never saw any beings or entities. I got off the table. I was able to get off like anyone getting out of bed. And I was able to walk around in this vessel. And as I was trying to find my way through this vessel, my roommates were in the living room there in the house, my roommate Skyler, and he saw me walk out the front door, and he tried calling out to me, and I didn't respond, so he knew something was up, like I was asleep or I was sleepwalking. And so I walked out into the blizzard, and as I walked out there, he came out and woke me up. And I remember waking up and hearing the sound of that engine, or what sounded like that drive that was powering this vessel, and I could still hear that amplified noise as I was waking up, and I was right underneath the street light on the corner of the street there. And I remember looking up at the street light, and as the sound started to fade away, it downsized itself to the sound of the freeway that goes through our town. I-15 from Las Vegas to Salt Lake goes right through the heart of Cedar City, and I could hear that constant hum from the freeway. And from that vision, I had like a sort of premonition come through there. It was almost like a message that was directed at me, and it told me to go out to Rachel. I know this sounds far-fetched and hard to believe, but this was telling me to go out to Rachel. So I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt, and it didn't require an act of faith or anything like that. I just knew we had to go out to Area 51 because something was going to happen that day out there. And so I called up Nate, my friend Nate, later that morning, and I said, hey, we have to go out here. And he agreed. And, we went out there that morning, and we wound up in this ghost town about 36 miles east of Rachel. It's about 40 miles. And it's plenty far away from the boundary of Area 51, and we went out to this ghost town in the dead of winter, outside of tourist season. I mean, in the summer, there's nobody out here. That's how neglected this area is, right? And we're sitting out in this ghost town. We took a drive out to this ghost town, which is about 10 miles off the main highway, going out towards. We hadn't gotten to extraterrestrial highway yet. This is just the main Great Basin highway. But if you look up this ghost town, Delamar, on the map, you can kind of see where it's at. And we drove out there, And the weirdest thing happened while we were out there, walking around these Old West ruins. These unmanned drones, these military drones showed up, and they circled over our head for like 20 minutes. And I remember both me and Nate just being kind of like mind blown that these guys were just sitting there like ravens circling over our head. They just stayed there, and they just circled us. And we actually captured this on video. I never uploaded the video to YouTube, but I've got it somewhere in my archive from my iPhone of these objects just sitting there circling around us, and it made me feel a little uneasy, but at the same time I felt like this weird connection to what was going on here because of that dream, that vision that I had that morning. And this wasn't the experience that I was led to believe it was yet. We, about 3/4 of the way through the day, we left Delmar. We wound up over at the Little Alien. I know Pat at the Little Alien. She's a friend of mine. I got to know her later on after this whole experience. She started working with us on the Utah UFO Festival a little bit. We coordinate with those folks out there in Rachel. They're great. Pat and Connie, the owners out there. But it was right before dark. We had just eaten dinner at the Little Alien, and we were getting ready to head home, and it wasn't quite dark yet. And we decided we were going to head back to Utah. And up to this point, we hadn't seen anything yet, and I still had this feeling lingering that something was supposed to happen. And as we were driving back towards Caliente, we were in that opposite adjacent. Have you ever been out to Area 51, Elizabeth?
We were going to go on this trip up to Concrete, Washington, and we got behind. We had a little mishap with a missing item. But we may be going on our way back to New Mexico.
Okay.
So,
okay,
yeah.
Well, there's a valley. I'm just trying to describe the geography here.
Okay.
You have this one valley where Rachel is stationed, and then you go over this little mountain pass, and then you're in the next valley over, and there's this long dirt road that stems off of Extraterrestrial Highway, and it's called Groom Lake Road, and it's like the main entrance to Area 51. So we were already 12 miles away from Rachel in that valley where Groom Lake Road is, and we were heading back towards Caliente. And as we were about halfway through that valley, the moon was coming up. It was like a full moon, and it wasn't quite dark yet. But guess what happened?
What?
4 orbs, 4 perfectly round orbs. They didn't look fiery to me. I'm just going on memory here. They didn't look fiery to me. They didn't look like flares. They didn't look like anything like that. They were perfect orange spheres that were muffled. They weren't very bright. And they came out from behind this mountain that was off to our left, that's right alongside Extraterrestrial Highway there, and these objects went over the mountain, and they came down into the valley floor, and they were just like above the brush. And they were going really slow. And at that time I had a mirrorless camera. It was brand new. I had left all my other camera gear at home, so all I had was a wide angle lens, and there was a telepathic connection here. There had to be, because these things were they were so close to us that I just automatically was grabbing my camera and trying to get the footage to roll while I was driving a Jeep Cherokee at like 80 miles an hour. I was sitting here. I had slowed down by that time. I was fumbling for my camera. It's like right when I went to go and try to capture video of these things, it's almost like they could sense my intentions, and they did not want to be captured that close on camera. Mm-hmm. And so it's like they just left. They disappeared in a domino effect. They just disappeared and dematerialized in thin air where they were gone. And it wasn't quite dark yet, so it was just, you could get a good perspective of these things. But later on, we were sitting there off to the side of the road, like, what happened? Why did they leave so quick? We were just completely dumbfounded. Nate didn't believe in any of that stuff, Nate Lamb, and he was seeing this with his own eyes, and we were both dismayed. And we have these videos on YouTube where later on that night we managed to get some footage of these objects, but by the time I was actually able to get them on camera, they were so far away, it doesn't do it justice as to the experience we had. And it's like nobody's going to believe us anyway, so why even try to gather video footage, because nobody's going to buy your story. No one's going to believe you. We live in a secular society where people have to question everything. And it's like, what happened to, that's, something that just blows my mind about our secular culture. It's just so, I don't know. I'm just going on my personal experience here. So we're back on the highway and was wondering what happened, why they disappeared so quick. And I knew why, because I was trying to roll the footage. I later kind of made that connected those dots, But we're back on the highway, and I'm heading back towards Caliente, and we hadn't been on the road more than 2 or 3 minutes when these objects appeared in my rearview mirror, and they were on the opposite end of the valley where Groom Lake Road is. And so I automatically turned around, and I started flooring my vehicle back to Rachel as fast as I could drive it, trying to catch up to these things. And these objects started putting on a light show in that valley where they would allow us to get close enough, and then when we got too close, they would disappear and reappear just seconds on the opposite end of the valley. So it was like they were disappearing and reappearing. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
And so these things were just playing tricks with us, and it was like watching this light show. And that was the most life-changing event that I've ever experienced. And it's funny that it happened out of all places out on extraterrestrial highway. And I'd like to think that these are intelligences or something else, but what I have to say is because of my connection out there and because of these things leading up to that night when we had that sighting, I can't help but think that those lights were manufactured by personnel out there at the military base, and they had kept an eye on us the entire day. We were the only ones at the Alien Inn that night, and we were the only ones that witnessed those objects out in the valley where Groom Lake Road is. And so it was like, you know what, we know this. I'm just making this connection after 2 or 3 years of walking the walk and putting on this vest, but I can't help but think they knew for a fact that a little thing like that would cause me to walk the walk and take action. And I don't know.
Maybe, I'm not sure it was anybody in government, but to me that would speak more to alien races who are trying to encourage you to walk the walk, not necessarily any like a MyLab or a RIA, because they're not trying to do any sort of disclosure, and you are. I mean, you're trying to get people together and organize and do citizen journalism. So are you thinking it's government, or are you really thinking that it's
get a load of this. I'm not afraid of the camel guys, the men working in garb out there. They've never done anything to me to harass me, and they've always what knowledge I've had of them running into them is they've been very good to me. And I have this weird, I'm not scared of anything out there. I find this strange peace when I go out to the little alien, when I'm dealing with Pat, the owner out there. There's that community out there is more aware of what's going on out there than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are tight-lipped about it, but I've had experiences listening. I've heard Pat tell her stories to me. She's told personal stories to me that I think she would be very hesitant to share on air, but they know some of those people working out of that base. And like I said, it's easy for us to say the government's the big bad guy here, but maybe they don't have all the answers either. Maybe why these people interfere with contactees is they're trying to find out who these beings are contacting as well, and so they're trying to find out what's going on too, because they really don't know that as much as we think they do. Mm-hmm. But the weird connection is if I had that dream, I can't rule out the fact that maybe there's some sort of reverse engineered technology that they are able to influence people's dreams as well, where they would lead me out there to near the base. I mean, why would they, if ETs are involved with this, why would they inspire me to go to the base to draw any different conclusion? Does that make sense? It's like, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they could send me anywhere.
Well, we'll think on that. We have a question from the Spreaker chat room, a couple of questions. The first one is from Beyond the Omniverse, and he's wondering if you know how many different types or groups of aliens you've been in contact with.
Well, can I tell you something? All I can tell you is the ones that I've come into contact with, I think they haven't taken on any human shape or form. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. To me, it does.
I think
Yeah,
when I've gone through these portals, I wind up on the other side of this. It's kind of like Jodie Foster being stuck in some sort of comfortable world that she can handle, right? Except in the movie Contact, there are two human beings that are conversing in that world that she's comfortable in Pensacola, Florida. When I've had this experience where I felt like I died and went to the other side, and I've gone through this portal, I've come to have these conversations with these intelligences, and I don't think they're taking on their form in this realm. So in this realm, I'm not a human. I'm like some sort of energy source. And when I've been chased by these entities where I thought they were hostile at first, and when they caught up to me and we started having these conversations, we'll spend 3 hours here talking about stuff, trying to get a basic idea across so people can kind of understand what's going on here. But this would be like having a 10,000 hour conversation about a specific idea in mere split seconds. So there was like this telepathic ability to communicate in this realm where I felt like I had a direct fiber optic cable connected to my brain, imparting all this data. And so it happened in a split second. It didn't require us to hang around for several hours trying to tell stories and have a conversation. It was instantaneous. And I've had that experience more than once when, going out here to the other side and having these abilities. And when I've gone to the other side, I've been able to completely control the outcome of that. And when I'm ready to come back to our reality, I can do that. It's like I have complete control over that. And I feel like that's a gift that I would not have if it wasn't for Yvonne Smith. And it was Yvonne Smith that told me. I don't even think she remembers telling me this stuff, but I remember her sharing this information with me in 2015 at the same conference that I met you, Elizabeth. And so it's like at that point I had not experienced these doorways. I hadn't gone through these or learned from any of this stuff. So
yeah, and Yvonne Smith, not everybody who's listening knows who Yvonne Smith is. Can you tell the audience a little bit about her background?
Well, there's a lot I don't know about her because she wanted to regress me, and I've never done anything like that, and I wasn't comfortable with that. It's like someone asked me to take a drug. I don't know what it would do to me. It's like right. I never consented to that. But she's worked with thousands of contactees and experiencers, and I think even abductees, and she conducts these experiencer sessions at UFO Congress, and I've never been to one of those, but maybe I should go to one. And she's just Stanton Friedman introduced me to her. Both her and Kathleen introduced me to Yvonne Smith, and they vouched for her. And it was like I just got this, the fact that she literally cured me. I'm not gonna lie. This thing that I always thought was evil. It's like Galileo. It's like people thinking the Earth is round was evil. Back in Galileo's time, it was a misinterpretation that was a result of conditioning from my religious upbringing. That was misidentifying and mislabeling this force that was trying to connect with me for my whole life. I didn't know that these night terrors, these things that came into my room at night that I thought was something evil. I never realized that these things were trying to connect with me because I was so scared of them. But when I came to realize that it wasn't evil, is because these things would retreat when I, said something religiously to them. But this time when I, put the religion aside and just looked at this with an open mind, like Yvonne Smith suggested, all it did is send me through a doorway. All it did is send me out of this reality, out of this world, and basically transported me across time and space. It's literally like that movie Jodie Foster where she's riding inside the time capsule and she gets zipped clear across the galaxy. I've had one of these sessions I left this Earth and I went clear deep into interstellar space, and I saw the beauty of it. and I was in complete control, and all I did was feel this utter deep joy. Every time I've had these experiences, I've had this immense joy. And so I don't know, I can't say it's Zeta Greys or it's reptilians. I don't know what intelligence is connecting to me, but I do know that there is these intelligences, and there's more than just one kind that are inspiring me and teaching me things from these doorways that I've been able to open up. And I felt nothing but love, I guess is the best word. You know, it cured me. Yvonne Smith helped me. So I've never had one of these negative experiences that these people who have been taken and, you know, by these greys or whatever. My experience is not that experience.
Right.
I have an affinity for the greys because I get a general positive feeling about them. That's just my intuition. I can't say that I've ever seen them, but did I have owls growing up in my dreams and visions? Yeah, I had this classic screech owl was appearing in my dreams from when I was going out in the hills, and you know, these things cured me of my gold lust and gold fever that I was talking about at the beginning of the interview tonight. So, you know, after going through those portals and going through all this progression and these learning experiences, I felt like I'm on a road to eternal progression here, where I'm seeing beyond this life in so many different ways. It reminds me of a quote that came from the famous Crazy Horse from the Lakota people, when he said, this is not his exact words, but his saying was that this reality that we're in, this world that we see here, is just the shadow of the real world, and the only way to get to the real world is either through death or through maybe these sort of doorways or visions. And so that's kind of what I feel like I'm dealing with right now, and nothing's been able to, no religion and no culture or anything for that matter has been able to bring peace into my life like the UFO road has done. And so there's a strong relationship here to that phenomenon, and I can't put my finger on that exactly, but I can tell you that it's linked specifically to that phenomenon.
I have a question for you. When you were talking about this creature that helped you go through the portals, and you were saying that for a long time you just felt that it was evil, that it was something very, very
It was
bad.
more than one. It was more than one individual. It was many.
Did you ever see it, or was it a shadow, or how did it appear to you when you first saw it, and what was it about it that made you so frightened?
Well, when I was 16 and 17, I saw, I guess you could say, my brother would be able to tell you more about myself than I can in some ways, because I was drawing in high school. I was drawing these things that I called owls. I go to a lot of petrichor sites, and I was drawing these creepy looking creatures because I had so much affinity for it somehow that I was drawing them in my art, and I still put them in my art. But there's these owls with like these it's kind of an abstract concept, you know, and I don't know if it has something to do with grays, but I wouldn't doubt it. I can't help but think, you know, after what I've learned from hearing other people's experiences, that this probably does have something to do with the grays.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I've never been regressed. I don't want to be. I don't think that's a good idea, because, you know, they can plant things in your head that were never there, potentially. And so I think going on this raw experience and what I know now and connecting the dots, I think it's the best way to keep this in its purest form without being, I think, influenced. Now, I don't have any experiences with the government that I know of, other than getting offered that position to go undercover, you know, selling, you know, that was something that I think was on the surface. But people ask me, why are you doing a UFO Fest in Utah? And I said, well, think about it. We have the Mormon Church here, but we also have the NSA here. They put their data center here. This is something Edward Snowden blew the whistle on. You know, and so this is like ground zero here in Utah for the national security state. with some of their current operations. And so when the Salt Lake Tribune came to our event and they asked me that, that's the answer I gave them. And I was a little scared saying that, but it's like people need to start talking about this. And when you bring up politics, nobody wants to, they run the other way, you know. But a UFO fest, people will open their minds to that, and it could cover a whole conglomerate of material and discourse talking about government, you know, classified science and some of these corporations working in these military installations. You know, they've got stuff we can't even fathom. If you read Ben Rich's quote, his own perspective alone, the former CEO of Lockheed Martin, he himself said that we have the technology to go to the stars, and anything you could dream up, they already have, you know. And it's like, what more proof do we need? What more substantial testimony than we need than a source like that? I mean, there's plenty of that if you start digging around. And you know, the more I dig around, the more truth I find. Even with individuals like Patty Greer, as some people might think she's aloof and she's gone off the deep end with her crop circle research, but I'm starting to seriously believe the struggles that she's dealing with because she's trying to get that information out to humanity. There is so much incredible information for people here that it's hard to get this information out to humanity. I had a conversation with Patty Greer the other day on the phone because I talked to the owner of UFO TV, and she's had a kind of a skirmish with them, and I got both sides of the story as to that, you know, related to that controversy. But I went on social media and I told my perspective of how I thought Patty Greer was getting the short end of the stick, you know. And I think more people need to look at some of these researchers that have put so much energy into their work.
Okay,
you know,
we're going to do that when we come up in the next hour, because I've just heard from Eric Markham that we want to talk to you about that, about doing that in the future as something as part of what this community does here at Spaced Out Radio and Forest Moon Paranormal. Sorry to break in, but you know, folks, if you're listening to him, we're actually going to go deeply into that. So I want to save it for an hour, more than 20 minutes from now. Okay, because we actually want to ask you. We're in the break, and we said, let's ask him what, you know, about this, because it's something that we're deeply committed to here. Eric Cooper, Forest Moon Paranormal, Mike Morin, a lot of the Spaced Out Radio community, Orb Weaver, Orb Gardner, who was, she's one of our chat room listeners. She was here with us, not here with us, but in concrete at the Paracon. You know, a lot of the listeners are ready and willing to listen to researchers who are really trying to get the truth out about a lot of different information, not just UFOs. So, we definitely want to talk about that. But before we do, I want to get to the chat room questions.
I wasn't able to bring up the chat room. I tried multiple times. I don't know why I can't open it.
It's just, sometimes it's pissy with people. It was pissy with me a couple weeks ago, so I apologize about that. It doesn't, and you have to reload. Okay, so I have a question from Orb Gardner, and maybe you know about this, and maybe you've talked to people who know about this, but she says she has orbs. She has had orbs for 3 years all around her cabin, and she moved in 3 years ago. And she has neighbors and even people in Seattle where she lives who know about the phenomena. The ones near her house show up on camera most of the time, but the ones who are 100 yards away or more never show up when she walks down to take pictures of them. And she says she thinks it's because they don't know her or they're not about her or something like that. She's wondering what we think, and I'm wondering what you think since you're on the air. She says they're definitely not hardware or ships, and she says her 3 years of photography tell her that they are light but only have personalities, and they make themselves known to her and a few other people in her neighborhood. So, have you ever talked to any researchers who are working with orbs or similar things?
No, but I have a direct experience with orbs that I can share with you guys if you want to hear it.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, so each one of these times that I've gone through this portal has been a different learning experience. And this is, some people are going to find this hard to believe, but when I went through one of these portals, you know, what happened is I came out on the other side and I was a blue orb. I was a blue orb flying through the sky. And what happened is, I'm going to just be real here and just tell you guys the truth. I was flying over southern Nevada, and I flew over California. I remember looking down on Los Angeles, and the previous vision I had before this, or the experience I had before this, I went clear out into interstellar space, but this time I wanted to dive to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And don't ask me why I wanted to go to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, but I have different desires and ambitions when I'm on this other side. And maybe it's telling me things I don't know about myself, but I went down into the bottom of the ocean in this experience, and that next morning when I woke up from this experience, when I came back, I was literally online looking for sightings of a blue orb over southern Nevada and southern California, because if someone had seen it, it would be like me looking at myself. And it sounds strange, but I have this crazy theory now because of that experience that I had. I have this crazy hypothesis, let me be politically correct here, that maybe some of these orbs that people are seeing are actually other people. I don't know if it's a possibility, but you know, I can't rule that out because it's happened to me more than once. And when I was conversing with those intelligences, they were also orbs. So I was an orb, they were an orb. They were like a different color than me, but we were having this conversation, this hyper fast, lightning fast conversation that was like I said, a fiber optic connection. It was instantaneous. And that's an incredible extension of the human soul and the human spirit, if you ask me. We're capable of so much more than just being in this shell that we have as a human body. I think we're in this body for a learning experience, you know, but I think we're so much more than humans. That's all I can say. I came to realize I'm more than just a human. And that, I mean, that's a limited answer. I know I can't, you know, the more I learn about this, the less I know. And, I don't think we're meant to know every detail. I think we are not given all the answers so that we can progress and we can learn from all this. I think we're given these things so we can become better, whether it's just in this life or the next. I think we're all on a path towards eternal progression. I think it's constantly growing. And your human life, from my experiences and from what I'm starting to learn, is that our human life really never had a real beginning. We've always existed, and we will always exist. And I don't think when we die, I don't think we lose our individuality. I think we maintain that sense of self when we leave this life. We always maintain that autonomy. I don't think we go and join some sort of hive mind where we lose our individuality. I don't believe that. I think we're innate intelligences that are given, that each one of us are unique, you know, and we're precious. And, you know, I can't help but tie the Creator into this. I think the Creator plays a huge role in this thing. But when we're looking at UFOs and we're looking at the UFO road, we got to look at other roads too. I mean, all roads lead back home. And so when you're looking at all these threads, you can't just look at the UFO thread. You got to look at every single thread out there, because they weave a much bigger picture. It's like weaving a basket. You know, the basket's incomplete without all the threads. And so, you know, some people are meant to wind up on the UFO road. Some people are not. And I think people know when they're chosen. I've noticed people who are chosen, they don't deviate from that road. They stay on it because that's where they were led, you know. And so, do I think it has something to do with the extraterrestrial intelligence? Yes. I think there's an extension beyond this planet, well beyond this planet. And it's hard for us small humans to fathom that. But the Earth was always round when people thought it was flat back in the Middle Ages, right? It was always round. Doesn't matter what we thought back then, it was always round. We've never been alone. We've never been alone in the universe. We've always had these pipelines coming to our planet. We've always been influenced by these intelligences. And I think they have the technology to come into our physical realm, and they have the technology. I do think that when crafts went down at Aztec and Roswell, there were temporal beings that came into our realm that lost their lives because they weren't anticipating a ship crashing. But we can't even fathom the technologies that these intelligences have. But I can tell you right now that we wouldn't be here if they meant us any sort of malice. If you ask me, we simply wouldn't be here. So, that's kind of my experience. That's kind of my inconclusive conclusion.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful story, and Orb Gardner is very excited to hear it. And she was wondering if, when you were this orb, if you were a gentle, peaceful, and wise, like guardian angel. How did you feel about yourself?
No. All I had this primordial instinct and desire to want to fly through the sky as fast as I could. And all I wanted to do when I was in that realm, in that state, all I wanted to do was just crash dive into the Pacific Ocean. Oh. I wanted to have an experience that I can't have in this physical body.
Right. Okay. Got it. She has some more questions about orbs before we go.
Okay.
She's wondering if her place is in a very beautiful spot near Mount Baker, and she's there.
Where's Mount Baker at? What state again? Georgia?
I believe it is. Is it Baker? It's in Washington. Is it Washington? Anyway,
I've never been up there. I'd love to go up there sometime.
Yeah, and she sees two rivers come together, and there's a mountain view where they come together, and she thinks it might be a Native American burial spot, and that there might be orbs connected with that.
I think it's very possible. In a lot of cultures, we go on living after this life. We don't, things that happen in the past, there's a tie directly from the past to the present, especially to sacred places. Things never change in those sacred places. And, if you think about all the problems we're dealing with in the world today with, these hurricanes and these massive earthquakes happening, and maybe it's because we're supposed to be reminded that humanity cannot survive without those sacred places. I think we need to start listening to those who are willing to open up to us from a lot of these indigenous communities, those that are willing to, teach the public. I think we need to recognize those sacred places, and you don't have to be native to respect that significance. You can allow these Lakota people to go to these sacred spaces, and you can allow these Hopi people and the people up there in Washington to perform their ceremonies. Non-Indian people don't need to be a part of that. Part of the respect is learning that these people are watching out for us, and they are doing their sacred things in order to benefit the rest of us. And I get this impression that there are a lot of wannabes out there, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but they need to realize that it's not easy being on that red road for those people who grew up on the res, who grew up in those communities. They struggle, and I could go down and start a whole new conversation about that. I could go into immense detail about that, because I know a lot of people. Yeah.
But we basically, as non-native people and people who are recent ethnicities to this land, need to learn to respect the land in a similar way.
Oh, of course, yeah. And you know what? I think we as I'm coming at this from being a non-Indian person. You know what? I'm grateful. I grew up around the Navajo people, and I've dated a girl from Church Rock, and I've walked in their shoes. But you know what's cool about, and I'm not trying to sound condescending here. This is the truth. There is such thing as white privilege. You know where that comes from? I can go out to the res and pretend to be one in that community or be a part of that community, but when I get burnt out on it, I don't have to be a part of it anymore. I can go back to being white. It's so much more convenient being white. But if you know some of the struggles and some of the spiritual and cultural obligations that some of my friends have to go through being Navajo, it's not so, you wouldn't want to, it would burn me out tremendously. I thought my religion, Mormon faith and religion, was an obligation and a chore and something that I struggle with religion because I feel like it restricts me in some ways, but I wouldn't want to be Navajo. I mean, I've seen the obligations that some of those young people that are gifted or have certain abilities, once they find out they have those, they have to go through like years of training to achieve a certain responsibility, and it's to help other people.
Right.
And I don't know. It's so much easier for me to be white. I mean, why would anybody want, it's funny because I dated this girl from Church Rock who, grew up in the Indian placement program, and she was Navajo. She's a little girl up in Salt Lake, and I realized at the time I better cut it off right here because it's
long story. Yeah. We're going to cut it off. Nathan, if people want to contact you and they want to find out about the Utah UFO Festival, which is happening when next year?
We're shooting for Memorial Day weekend on the, I believe, 24th and 25th.
In Cedar City, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they want to find out, how do they contact you, and what website do they go to?
They can go to utahufofest.org. People are welcome to network with me on Facebook. I'm totally cool with that. I don't use Facebook for personal reasons. I use it for networking opportunities, kind of like a LinkedIn. So if people want to add me on Facebook, I don't shy away from that. You can add me as Nathan Arizona on there. I post my photography there, but people can contact me through Messenger on there. That's the most convenient for me. That's what I use as my primary communication tool.
Great. And we're going to be back after the break. We have some questions about Aztec, which you've been to, and Tolek,
okay,
if you've ever heard of that. We're going to be back with those questions at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for listening. This is Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. We'll be back after these messages.
Sounds good.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Wachowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Elizabeth Anglin and SOR.
Hey everybody, this is Elizabeth Anglin. I'm coming back at you on Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com. Thank you so much for listening. Man, I am tired out this evening. I've been in a car with Eric Markham for several days and at the Concrete Paracon, the Forest Moon Paracon in Concrete, Washington. It was fun. We talked a lot. My throat's tired. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing better than getting together with people who are on their own paranormal path, no matter what that path is, whether it is UFOs or dragons or fairies or ghosts or various astral beings that are doing things they should not be doing or in places they don't belong. We had such a great time getting together and talking about these issues, talking about research, paranormal research, and all the rest. Before we go on, we're going to continue on talking to Nathan, Arizona. He's gone out to Aztec, New Mexico. We're going to ask some questions about that from the chat room. But before we do that, I want to thank everybody who's listening from North America and around the world, especially everyone who is listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, everyone who is at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on KTLK, The Fringe. I also want to thank our music maker, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses and currently of Art of Anarchy. Thank you so much for making music for us. And if you are on the web, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm and TalkStream Live, and also on Stitcher. Tonight we are here with Nathan, Arizona. He is the founder of the Utah UFO Festival. He is a UFO experiencer, contactee. He has had some mystical, spiritual experiences of definitely the other kind, and he's also been traveling around to places in the desert Southwest, Dulce, Aztec, New Mexico, Area 51, Dugway, etc., and doing his own research projects and photography projects along the way. Nathan, so much. We want to thank you so much for being here. And we have had a question from the chat room. The first one is, do you know anything about Tolec? T-O-L-E-C. Okay. And then the next one is, what do you know about Aztec, New Mexico?
And I don't care if you're human or something else. If something lost their lives there, that's what I think. I think something actually left, and died at that location. So, just like anywhere, you pay your respects, and that's what I did there. I respected whatever I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, Eric. Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was like, oh, who's that voice? It sounds like mine.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, you know, I don't know for certain if something actually did crash there, but as I was looking at the mesa and I saw the concrete block that, you know, has been pointed out in a few documentaries, and I wandered all that area, and, you know, I saw some what looked like, I can't say it's scientific fact, but I'm a geologist. I look for stuff that doesn't look completely natural, that stuff that's, you know, I can point out an old Spanish mining dump from like 300 years ago, and most people overlook that and they can't see it, right? So I've got a good eye on, I think, pulling out stuff that's not natural to the landscape, and there's enough going on out there. There's enough scrapes in the sandstone and digs in the sandstone, and, you know, fire burns and everything else to suggest that something did occur out there. You know, it wasn't just an oil fire. There definitely was something that I've listened to the several different accounts. I've looked into the research, and then I went physically to the location to experience it for myself. And I've been there, like I said, I've been there more than once. And I think if you're going to be if you're really serious about this research and you've had these experiences, you're not doing yourself a favor if you're not going to these places. I think every researcher should make the conscious effort to go to these places and not just surf from the comfort of their armchair. You know, you need to get out to these places. And I don't get spooked by camping out in the desert all by myself. That might scare a lot of people, but I think I've gotten to a level of understanding and intuition from, you know, facing those fears and realizing that you're being watched out for, that, you know, that these things are taking care of you even. There's nothing to fear. And maybe some people would be spooked to go out there and camp at a place like Aztec, but think about that for a minute. If you seriously want to make a real connection, go to somewhere like the Aztec crash site and actually camp there. From my knowledge, there's no restrictions that would forbid you from camping out there. It's public land, so anybody can go out to that site, that crash site, and set up camp and spend the night there. And let me tell you something, it's incredible, the stars. What better place to camp and see the stars, right?
Right.
So.
Right. Amazing stars. I mean, just that area in general, it's so high, it's so dry. You can see the whole Milky Way. You can see detail that you can't see anywhere else. Now, I'm not as familiar as some are with the Aztec, New Mexico history. Can you tell us a little bit about what people think happened there and compare that to what you experienced there?
Well, I've got my own theories as to what I think is going on in the Four Corners region. Let me rephrase that. I have my own hypothesis as to what's going on, and I tend to think that everything that New Mexico has been experiencing is coming from the Dulce area, or maybe up there in Colorado around the San Luis Valley. I think it's stemming from further north, and I think these communities are being affected because I'm not saying that there's necessarily an underground facility at Dulce. I've been out to Dulce, and I felt a lot of energy out there, and I actually experienced a triangular-shaped craft outside of Dulce maneuver in such ways that I can't. That was my second major UFO close encounter sighting, etc. You know, that's a whole nother story, and that would take quite a while to tell. I was on my way to Indian Market in 2014 with my brother, and you know, I saw a triangular-shaped craft in all places, Dulce, you know, the hotspot. I see orbs out on extraterrestrial highway, and then I'm in another UFO hotspot, and I see another thing. I was like, why don't I see something that's not in a UFO hotspot? So, I don't know, It's kind of crazy, but...
yeah, I mean, for you, it's interesting because you live close enough to these hotspots that you can actually go there, and a lot of people can't because they're pretty remote. So, and maybe it's because you are the journalist, you are the photojournalist. I mean, you can also get a picture, but you're also a truth teller. And you know, to me, it doesn't seem so odd. But I did kind of want to talk about Dulce because we were there this past week, and just in front of it, just over by Archuleta Mesa, just quickly. But Aztec, you went, you felt something there, you saw something there. Is there anything else that you can tell us about that?
Well, when I went to the first Dulce-based conference that the Hickory Apaches were putting on at the Wild Horse Casino, I think it's the Wild Horse Casino there in Dulce, I was a little skeptical. I didn't know what to think of it. They invited me over to do their photography for their event. And so I got to know Lauren Willis. She's one of the organizers of the event there. Got to know her on a personal level, and I got to know some of the other members of that community. And let me tell you something. That was a fun networking opportunity, and I didn't make it there in 2016. And so one of the members of the community there networked with me on Facebook, and they said, hey, we really missed you at our event this year. How come you didn't come? And I was like, you know what? I'm limited on resources. I wanted to come, but I'm going to be honest with you, I was just plumb broke. I didn't have the money to come out, or I would have. And they want me back this year in 2017 to do their photography, so I guess they're going to help me get over there. If I need a little help and assistance to get over there, they're gonna make it possible because they missed me this year. So when I was there on the first year's conference at the Dulce-based conference, I made so many. You know, there wasn't anybody that I didn't talk to who didn't have a UFO story. Everybody that I talked to had either a Bigfoot story or a UFO story. And I left the conference and I went around the community. I was talking to people at the gas station and the truck stop and the grocery store there. They all had stories to tell me. Even if they weren't at the conference, I had just normal people in the community telling me stories. And I've got a friend who's an artist from Dulce, New Mexico. I don't know if I should mention his name, but he's a prominent artist. And he lives down in Albuquerque out of Isleta Pueblo. That's where he's stationed at right now. But I talked to him, and he's had his own stories. Even though he doesn't totally believe in the phenomena itself, he still has anomalous stories that he's shared with me about the sky opening up and being able to see into another star field and all sorts of stuff that are tied to the Dulce area. And so you can't rule that place out that easily. It just it's I know the hardcore scientists like to write it off and say it's bogus. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I saw a triangular shaped craft out there, and I try to take things from us, with some scientific objectivity as well, and I share my personal feelings and intuition and include those on a personal level. But I try to look at things as objectively as I can. But there is something going on with Dulce. My brother and I, when we were driving in from the oil fields coming out of Farmington and driving down that highway, I think it's Highway 60, I'm not sure, mm-hmm. Going into Dulce, we noticed some large rock, what looked like massive mining dumps that are thousands of years old. They don't look like natural mesas. The way the rocks are just positioned there, it's like something distributed mind-boggling amounts of earth and rock and debris and relocated them. So I don't know if that's something that's it doesn't look like it's naturally occurring. Like if you drive up to the national forest area, you start to go into the higher mesas and into the mountainous region, the high plateaus there. Just some of the features in the landscape are incredibly wondrous. They don't look natural. They look artificial, some of them even. And I'm not saying that that's suggesting anything other than what it looked like visually. I'm just saying it was peculiar. And then, we're at the Dulce-based I was at the first Dulce-based conference, and when some members of the community heard about my story about the triangular-shaped craft that I had seen, they decided it'd be fun at 11 o'clock at night at the very tail end of the conference to go drive in a caravan 40 miles to the location where I was camped that night when I saw the object. So I had a little community caravan of Hickory Apaches that were going down the highway, all sharing the UFO stories with me and what they seen on that highway. And it was just mind-blowing, the amount of stories people had associated with that area, going down that highway that I had seen that triangular-shaped object. And it took me a while to find the location based on the memory of where we camped, but we found it. And we sat there talking for 2 or 3 hours, and I was just revisiting that memory, that sighting, and it was such an incredible feeling. And I went there a year later, even when I was in New Mexico not too long ago. I stopped there again this year. In 2017, I stopped, I was coming back through Santa Fe, and I stopped there again, and I've got this strange connection to that location now. I have to go back to that exact same campsite because it was such a strong memory, And
all right, so
it was so real.
Can we go with you can I go with you? Because I'm in New Mexico. It's not that far away from where I live. When you come back.
Yeah, I could take you there.
All right.
I could take you to that spot.
Okay. and because I would love to go. I would love to. I get such a feeling from it, and I've always gotten a feeling from that whole valley on the northwest end of Archuleta Mesa that sort of points from Chromo up toward Wolf Creek Pass. And I didn't know that was Dulce. Like, I didn't know that Archuleta Mesa went all the way to Chromo. And I'd been driving through there from Santa Fe up to the ranch on the Uncompahgre Plateau, where I was living for 7 years, thinking, they're aliens everywhere. There are aliens up at Wolf Creek. They're, aliens. And I'm like, but this is cool. And so when I really looked at the map and I looked at the name of the mesa, I went, well, yeah, it's Dulce. That's what. And I got a little picky because I was like, well, it's not just Dulce, it's Chromo. Everybody's got the name wrong. But were you in that like river valley side, or can you tell me basically?
I was in the canyon. I was in the canyon where the trees start to meander, kind of like maze-like as you're going up through the canyon. It was up in there, and I believe there was a creek. If I remember right, there's a river down in the bottom of that canyon.
Right. There's a beautiful little river. It's kind of a nice little meandering river or creek.
I was in there. In there.
Okay, so because that's the feeling I get. It's like, well, when I was looking at the map, and especially after driving by, I thought, oh, I want to go, in there. So yes, if you come back, I'd love to see your when you come back. Not
Elizabeth. I saw that triangular shaped craft up close. I saw the muffled white lights glowing out of each corner of that craft. It was pitch black. Do you remember 2014 when the moon when it was like during a full moon? It was right before Indian Market.
Yes,
it was cloudy it was cloudy the entire month. I don't know if you even remember that.
I was in New Mexico for Indian Market, so I remember it.
Okay, so it was drizzling in 2014, but the moon was out that night, and when this object appeared, I'm going to make a long story short because it would just take too much time to tell the story, but let me just describe the craft the moment I saw it. It was silhouetted against that gray, translucent sky when the moon's shining, and it was drizzly rain the whole night. So I wasn't seeing this on a it wasn't a star-filled night. It was completely cloudy and rainy when I saw this craft. And it went up into the clouds. It like slowly ascended into the clouds, and I watched it to rotate on its side like a wagon wheel before it flattened out and then ascended. So it was rotating sideways. No aircraft that I know can do that. It was rotating. Think of a wagon wheel turning slowly in the air. That's how it was turning on. And it had a central axis, and it was literally turning in a perfect circle. And this thing made a somewhat of a low hum, but it wasn't very loud. And I can't think of any aircraft. I started researching the TRB-3, and none of the craft that I've been able to see on Google match anything where I saw on this. This was like a minimalistic craft. There was nothing in the center. It was just a pitch black, large triangle, and it had a muffled, deeply embedded white light coming out of each corner of this triangle, and it was on its side, and it made a low hum. So it did make a noise, but it wasn't very loud. It was like not disturbing. It was just this low hum. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't know how else to describe it.
Okay, that is So cool. I have some listeners who PM'd me about, hey, do you want to talk about, black triangles? And I'm like, I don't remember black triangles. I have little silver ships and double thimble shaped ships and seed pot shaped ships, but I'm not a big black triangle person. So, you've just made.
Well, neither was I. It just happened. I saw it. So it's like, one of the gentlemen that we had that was from the Hickory community there, after we did the math and tried to do some of the guesstimating as to how big this might have been based on some of the land formations there, it was his guess that this could have been 150 feet wide from one end of the triangle to the other, like from end to end to end. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yes,
but
from the length of each triangle side, 150 feet.
It was huge.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that.
Well, I can believe it I have memories of being on ships, and there are football field ships,
Yeah, how does this thing defy gravity? How is it just floating with that low hum in the air without it was just like it might as well have been in outer space because gravity wasn't affecting this thing at all.
Right. Yeah.
It was just spent in the air.
It's crazy, crazy stuff. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for talking a little bit about Aztec. And for those of you who don't know, there was a reported crash in 1948 in Aztec, New Mexico. I just want to say something about that.
Okay.
That is the area when I was in Boston and I was having my first experiences where I realized I was an abductee. I had an experience that was partially conscious. I basically woke up in a tunnel that was in the side of a canyon, and I knew that it was either southwestern Colorado or northern New Mexico. I thought maybe it was Canyonlands area in Utah, just not west of Aztec, but west of Mesa Verde. And I was walking with a little gray alien, and the floor was sandy, and there was this indirect lighting, but I knew I was in some kind of sandstone, and walking along, being led along by this little gray alien, almost a white, little white guy, I would call him, but he was a gray. And I looked to my left, and I saw a Sasquatch, and I thought, that's a Bigfoot, and as I'm thinking, that's a Bigfoot, the little gray alien thinks at me. Pay no attention to him. That's not important. Don't look at him. And so I look at him again, and I'm like, yes, it is. That's a Bigfoot, And he's like trying to get me to pay no attention to that Bigfoot there, in the little cubby hole. And we walked on, and then we came out into one of those steep-sided canyons that has air plants along the side. Do you know the hanging plants that I'm talking about? You'll see them on the Hovenweep, plant that they're kind of on the sides of the canyon walls, and or Hovenweep. Is it Hovenweep or Hovenweep?
I think it's Hovenweep.
Hovenweep. You'll see,
Maybe.
You see pictures of Hovenweep, and some of them have these plants. I'm not sure if they have them near Aztec in any of the canyons, but what's interesting is that it is generally the same area, and my feeling about that experience, even though it was, over 25 years ago, was that I was in that general area and there was a base there. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of interconnected bases, mini bases, substations. I think the government really loves New Mexico. I think there's a lot going on there that any researcher that gets involved with it will usually get attacked for being get dubbed like a fraud or something like that. I tend people that are coming to my mind right now that I'm thinking of like people like Anthony Sanchez, who has done research out there in Dulce, has looked into it. He's one of those people that get kind of outed for, get scrutinized, and it's really easy for disinformation, if there is such a thing as disinformation agents, it's not hard to slander someone's name. Anyone that gets involved with any sort of UFO research that has to do with the Dulce Base area. You know, I've noticed a trend or pattern when I look at all this qualitative data that I've tried to sift through myself, trying to make sense of some of the folklore I've read. You know, I tend to get this idea, this general gist that anyone who really dives too deep in the research involving that area around New Mexico is often going to get slandered or defamed to a huge extent.
Because of the government in New Mexico, because of the government bases, Los Alamos. Well,
you know what's really funny is I get this twinkle in some people's eyes that are from like Jemez Springs. I've networked with people over in Jemez Springs. I've spent time in Jemez Pueblo. I'm not saying that Jemez Pueblo have a special connection to Los Alamos Labs. I didn't say that.
No, you didn't say that. And why would we think that, since, you know, Los Alamos is on the side of the Jemez and Jemez Springs is on the side of the Jemez? We don't. No, and there aren't a bunch of people who work in Los Alamos living in Jemez Springs now, are there?
No. But can I tell you something? I don't think they're keeping all this a secret because they don't want us to be informed. I think it might be in our best interest in a lot of ways that we don't know. We don't have to know. Listen, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I don't think we have to have all the answers. You know, I'm not, and I also don't think that there's a concerted effort by the entire federal government to keep this an elaborate cover-up from the rest of humanity. And I do believe that there are a few pockets of people in the government that want the public to know about this stuff. So I tend to think when we were going to go out to Area 51 last weekend, because of all this consistency I've been running into with the personnel out there at Area 51, I can't help but think that we're going to throw a dog a bone. Let's show them a little light show or something. I mean, it's not. I think I hear this big mystery discussion about when are we going to see disclosure, and I can't answer that question. But you know, I've had enough of these experiences myself in the internet age, in the post cyber age. I mean, the post what do you call it? The postmodern age. You know, of cyberspace. I've had these experiences that are not, you know, that are real in my own personal experience, you know, in my own personal walk here, and, you know, trying to look at things objectively. I try to even look at some of my own sightings objectively, because the last thing you want to do is deceive yourself. You want to make sure what you're dealing with, and you want to stick with the facts. And you know, when I shared those portal experiences with you guys, those are facts. Those are things that actually happened to me. These sightings actually happened to me, but I'm always keeping myself in check to try and maintain that scientific objectivity. So, because there are enough charlatans and there are enough, you know, there are some frauds, unfortunately, in the UFO field, and you want to avoid being deceived by the wrong sources. You know, right. So I think, you know, individually you can believe in your experiences. You can believe in, I've shared my personal experiences with you guys, but at the same time, I try to maintain somewhat of a scientific objectivity. I'm not critical of the phenomenon. I believe in the phenomenon, but I'm critical of the UFO field, the people in it. And that's what I become skeptical of, is because of some of the Fruit Loops and crackpots that we have to address sometimes.
Have you noticed that, I don't know if this is what you've noticed, because you've been to quite a few conferences and you do, you know, you are the founder of the Utah UFO Festival, but have you noticed some people that maybe go around and they collect information from others at these festivals and they sort of incorporate it into their own story? Or is that just me thinking that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't really observed that, okay. But I think you had me thinking about the feds there for a second.
Oh, okay. Well, what did you think about the feds? Because that's interesting too.
We've had a few clean-cut, what look like Mormon missionary guys that have a really unusual interest in UFOs for someone in that age group that shouldn't have that interest, because the consensus is most young people don't have that kind of interest. We'll get, like, I've had a few groups of people like that. We had someone follow us out to Rachel, Nevada, that had government plates. It was following our Area 51 caravan, and he never wanted to be in any of the photos. And we thought that was pretty strange, and he kept a certain distance away from the group, and he was at the little alien with the rest of the group. But I didn't notice any government plates. But Travis Walton said that his car had U.S. government license plates on it. It was like,
do you remember that one guy who was at the UFO conference that we were both at, who was very clean cut? He had on like a polo shirt. He had lots of muscles. He was African American, and he was asking the very odd questions. Do you remember him?
I don't. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
But I don't.
Well, he got in Travis's face, and he got kind of belligerent, and then he came up to my table where my book was, and he started asking me to divulge the real names of the people who were in the book. And I was like, no, I'm not telling you that. I changed their names for a reason. He's like, well, what town was this actually? And I said, I changed the name of the town for a reason, and he's like, well, why won't you tell me? And I'm like, because I changed their names to protect them. And he's like, well, then
for people like you.
It's like, well, how can I check if your story is real? And I'm like, guess what? You can't, because I'm protecting them. And
you've got to take it on faith alone.
Yeah, you have to take it on faith. And so, but he was odd in that he looked, his haircut was military, his muscles were military, he was the right age for military. And I kept thinking, this is either an exercise for him to see if he can infiltrate and gain information, or he's just sent here to infiltrate and gain information. And did that seem like that might have been the same thing with your Area 51 guy?
Well, let me tell you an interesting story, since we're brought up the moles and and agents. And I had a friend go into Navy intelligence. I won't mention his name, but he was a very close friend of mine. And about the same time that I was getting ready to plan our first year's event, he joins the Navy, but before he could, he had to get a security clearance. And so we had a federal agent show up at both me and my friend's house. And what's really odd about this is this guy was claiming that he was investigating our friend's background so he could get a security clearance, but he only visited me and Nate's house. I noticed a pattern here. I'm a natural investigator. I pick up on things like this. How come he didn't visit anybody else? Guess who Nate is? Nate's the only other guy that saw those orange orbs out in Nevada.
Oh, wow.
Out of all the friends that Thomas had, why did this guy only interview me and Nate? Yeah. And when he showed up to my house, the conversation didn't go down that avenue. All he wanted to know when it came to Thomas, his first set of questions was, how often did Thomas go out to Area 51 with you guys? How often did he go out to the little alien? Did he ever cross? He even asked that question, like, did he ever attempt to cross the boundary out at Area 51? It was a simple question like that, and I said no. And I happened to have this outline on the table, on the coffee table. It was talking about a proposal for the Utah UFO Fest. He picks it up and starts thumbing through it, and he says, "Why are you guys doing this in Cedar City?" And I said, well, I saw these orange orbs. I ended up telling him my story. The guy was really friendly, by the way. He wasn't like annoying. He was very friendly and very cordial. But he ended up talking to me for 2.5 hours, trying to discount my experience and anything I may have witnessed out at Area 51, like a hardline skeptic.
Yeah, and then he's also getting in. My thought was about this kid. He was also getting at the UFO Congress. He was getting information from me, or was trying to, by engaging me in argument. So like if you argue your point,
it sounds like the same pattern.
Yeah, it's just don't argue your point. Just be like, get out, go.
Yeah, but you know what? I ended up grilling this guy a little bit, and I got him to admit. He showed me his credentials. He was from a agency I'd never heard of, which is the Federal Investigative Service, and I never heard of it. Mm-hmm. And I got him to admit that he was stationed out at Nellis Air Force Base outside of Las Vegas. So he traveled clear up to Cedar City from Las Vegas, 3 hours to come and talk to me and my friend.
Wow.
So, that's kind of an interesting tidbit. That's all the details there. But when the conversation went for 2.5 hours in the direction on the topic of UFOs, I couldn't help but think that was his true motivation to be there at my house.
That makes sense. All right, we're going to change the topic real quick because we want to talk a little bit about the Utah UFO Festival, and also you're doing something in your home state. It sounds like you've been very successful getting your community to support you. We at Spaced Out Radio, we had planned to do a paranormal conference with a lot of UFO speakers, Miriam Delicato, myself, other people. Our Keith Andrews, who's an experiencer, was going to be there too. But the fires in British Columbia sort of prevented that. Everybody had been evacuated for 2 weeks. There was a lot of damage from the fires, and it just ended up that it was too much of a taxation on the local community that was trying to recover from the fire, and multiple fires in that area, and the fires were still going on. So we didn't have that. The Spaced Out Radio family didn't have that, but we did go to Concrete, Washington, to the Forest Moon Paranormal Conference, which was this weekend, and it was rather small, and I don't want to complain because it was excellent. We had Eric Markham, who is our resident scientist, speak about science and the paranormal, and our Keith Andrews speak about aliens, and I did some spirit mediumship things, and Mike Moran spoke about paranormal research, and Eric Cooper and Dave Scott, who's also here on Spaced Out Radio. So, and a lot of our listeners went, and it was great. But we are wondering, how is it? I mean, I'm personally wondering, you had 1,000 people in Cedar City, Utah, which seems kind of like you wouldn't expect that. How did you get that to happen? We had a very limited budget on. I have a pretty large social media following on Instagram. I utilize my resources for Instagram marketing, and I do a lot of plugging of our fest on some of my personal Instagram accounts. And then we're building an Instagram account. I've relied mostly on social media and pushing stuff on social media. Now, I've done a couple. I did one Kickstarter. My brother's done 2 successful Kickstarters. I'm having issues with a Kickstarter where I've been way late on trying to get rewards out to backers because of the project, not, kind of failing in some ways. And so that's been kind of a struggle for me. But I learned a lot of what I've done building, momentum, using that momentum that I learned from building crowdfunding. But I came to quickly realize that crowdfunding does not work with building an event. It's not the same cup of tea. When it comes to building an event, it's all about building alliances and convincing people of your vision. So I've had to go to various hotels and corporations, and I've had to show them how this festival is going to benefit them in the long run and how they need to look at it as an investment over the long run. Yeah, we're not much right now, but you keep on putting your heart into this with us and joining us on this cause, and you'll see this change happen. And the first year we had the hardest support. We had the hardest time getting support, and it was very small. And we can only afford to have one person there, which was Travis Walton, but he was enough to draw a sizable crowd, and it was just one evening. And the second time, the thing is, you got to focus on your first year's event. You can't plan a 10-year event because you'll overwhelm yourself. That's not what it's about. You have to start it as a small community event, and then you build momentum every year. And if you give up one year, you're going to lose that momentum, and you're going to be back at square one. So there's times where I felt like I wanted to live over New Mexico, and I want to leave Utah for good. Those times I'm feeling discouraged, and I don't feel like I'm getting any support.
And that's when I want to, I do have my hard times. There are those vulnerable moments. And even going into the third year, even though I have help, I'm still struggling on learning how to delegate out to people. I'm still feeling like the festival committee, the entire festival committee as an individual. But what I did was I had to focus on ways to make money. And so I focused on sponsorships. And I went from business to business, and I would make the rounds weekly back to the same businesses until I was building friendships and hanging out with managers at various businesses and just engaging in small talk with them for a couple hours while they're working. I know that sounds crazy, but guess what? We got our money for our event by doing this. We have a huge chain of sporting goods stores known as Sportsman's Warehouse. They sell guns and ammo and all sorts of stuff. They're a big chain here in the Southwest, and the manager gave us a sponsorship, put out gift cards. They even paid paid volunteers that get paid on a regular salary to come out and get paid to help us at our event. And they even helped us run a raffle for the event to raise money for the event. So that all came because of that work ethic and showing and creating that argument that there was a serious return on investment here. And if we can build this to a point where we can convince the TRT tax committee and the RAP tax committee, the city here, to start putting tax dollars into this, all of a sudden our event's paid for with tax dollars, and it becomes a community event. And I had to give up a certain level of control in order to make this event a community event that the community can own. I think that's where our success is starting to come in, is because the community they kind of see this as their event. It's not something that I incorporated, that I turned into a business. It's something that I created a nonprofit foundation out of, and I'm giving back to the community. And this event, I'm giving them a sense of ownership over it, and that means I can't be an owner of the fest. I might be the founder, but technically with a nonprofit, people could vote me out. I could lose control of the event.
Right.
So we're basically. It basically required me to have some faith and trust in my community and give up a certain level of control over the event in order for it to take on a life of its own. And I've seen the community, they can see that we're nonprofit. They can see that we're free to the public. They can see that we're interested in bringing more tourism to Cedar City. They can see our efforts. And because of that, they reciprocate. And when it's a true symbiotic relationship between the local businesses and the event, that's where it becomes grassroots. And what's incredible is we'll have a set itinerary of what we want to happen, a set schedule, and then all of a sudden more speakers come through in the last moment. And there's more musicians coming through that want to perform. We had a guy that helped build the Comic-Con there in Anaheim, California, want to help us plug our event in Hollywood. So he started one.
Well, wait, you had more than just speakers. You had musicians. What else did you have?
We've got all sorts of people showing up. I don't know. It's like I'm trying to take this beyond just a typical UFO fest. We had a music fest here that was really popular, but the founder passed away and no one else was willing to take on the reins. So now they're one beloved festival short. So they're kind of looking for something to fill those shoes as well. So, we don't want to just, we were thinking, well, you know what, we don't want to just be a music fest. We don't want to just be an art fest. We don't want to just be a UFO fest. We want to be a catch-all fest that makes it fun for the public to open their minds up to the phenomenon. And we're not just celebrating the research here or the fact that there's UFOs or there's people in this field or there's even a field of ufology. We're celebrating the pop culture, around the UFO phenomenon. So we're not looking at this from a scientific-based perspective. Mm-hmm. We're looking at this from a sociological perspective. Like, why is UFOs? Why do aliens? Why are they so popular in Hollywood? Let's look at this. Let's find positive ways to counter the tinfoil hat humor. Let's look for positive. Let's embrace the tinfoil hat humor, but at the same time educate people as to why that might be disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? It's like let's we had so many high school kids and college kids showing up with tinfoil hats at our event, and it was like they're about to get some culture shock at this next presentation being presented by, of all people, Christopher O'Brien. You should have seen some mortified looks on people's faces when some of his images popped up on a large movie screen. I'm sorry, it's kind of funny, but it's like now you guys know what this is all about.
Right.
So Christopher is kind of a hardline skeptic in some ways too. You know that, right? I don't know if you know Christopher O'Brien. Yeah,
yes, I've heard him talk. Yes.
Yeah, so we want to also be kind of a hard science. We want to take a hardline science stand too. I welcome the skeptics. Let them come out. Let them create their arguments. How are they going to hurt our cause? Let them come out and share their perspective. I think it makes it all the more controversial and all the more interesting for the general public to come in and embrace the topic. You know, we have to be willing to tolerate and welcome opinions that we would otherwise oppose in some ways too. So I think another thing that's really working for our event is we're not, you know, we're kind of being inclusive in that fashion. So, you know, I went to the MUFON conference and did their photography down in Vegas, and there was no science there. I am not kidding. I felt like I went to a Star Trek fest. That's how out there. I mean, I enjoyed it, and the people I met there were great, but MUFON is supposed to be like a really hard scientific-based organization, and they're not even following the tenets of their manifesto for their organization at that latest conference. It was like...
Yeah, it was exceedingly controversial about who they had and sort of, you know, the integrity and, you know, is this made up? Is this a story? Is this, you know, just somebody's stuff? And, you know, I remember that it was like, this is MUFON?
Did you go to that, Elizabeth?
I didn't, and you know, MUFON has been alternatively good and bad to me as a sort of hardcore abductee who is in the hybridization program. I have had MUFON members attack me online. I've fought with them, and I've reconciled with them. And so I think, and MUFON was willing. I couldn't make it the year before because I was ill, and I had bought a table. And they were so kind. They refunded me the money from the table, and they sold my books for me. So I ended up, without going, making $250, which you would never make if you actually went to the event, because you know how much money it costs to be there. So I didn't go this year. Again, I was fighting an illness, but
okay.
Yeah, no worries, everyone. I'm going to be fine. It's just a temporary thing. But
hopefully you get better quick.
Yeah, it's a little chronic, but it's temporary. Anyway, I have such mixed feelings about them because I think that MUFON is oftentimes where we get this government disinformation and we get these, you know, PsyCop came through to the John Mack abductee group through MUFON. They got a PsyCop plant into our group. So, and I think that still happens, but there are some great people in MUFON who are, you can actually fight it out with them and then become really good friends. You know?
Yeah, and I don't think they're all aware. I don't think there might be a few bad apples making their way through MUFON like that, but I don't think all MUFON's like that. And I think a lot of people are in MUFON are probably unaware or ignorant of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the good people in MUFON are unaware or ignorant of the sort of darker forces in MUFON. And
I think that's any organization's probably potentially got that potential. Any kind of organization that has a hierarchy, if it's not anonymous or some loose, decentralized group, I think there's always going to be that risk of some sort of infiltration. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you know, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and I think we'll talk more about your community building efforts. It sounds almost like an art fest, UFO fest, just celebration in general of, you know,
that we're not alone.
We're not alone.
In the Steven Spielberg spirit of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that kind of movie magic type of celebration. You know, we want to embrace that positivity. You know, think of like films like the 40th anniversary to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We're kind of basking in. We're trying to bask in that same kind of positivity.
Right. So I want to hear more. I think I want to come now. It's what, Memorial Day weekend, you think, this coming year? Excellent.
Yep. It's daunting to think of all the work I have ahead to do for the event. So don't remind me too fast, too quick.
Oh, come on! That's almost 9 months away, 8 months away. So you got
it's
time.
So much work.
It's wow. But you know, I want to tell everyone, if you haven't been to the desert Southwest, Eric Markham and I, who are traveling back from Concrete, Washington, we are going to go through that area tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have time to. You know, in your area, you have Zion National Park, Monument Valley's not that far away, Canyon de Chelly's not that far away.
It's a good 7 hours from here, Canyon de Chelly.
Oh, is it? Well, what's near you I mean,
Zion,
you get
Zion is
stars.
45 minutes away from us, and Cedar Breaks National Park is 20 minutes away from us. Bryce is about 60 minutes away from us.
Bryce is awesome and not that many people know about it. You know,
yeah, but there's a best kept secret known as Cedar Breaks that has a very similar overlook to Bryce.
Wow.
And it's right above Cedar City here, about just up the canyon from Cedar City.
Okay.
We're right on the cusp of canyon country here.
That's awesome. If people want to know about the Utah UFO Festival and contact you, how do they do that, Nathan?
You can just go to the utahufofest.org. Or, like I said, you can contact me on Facebook. If you're on Instagram and you like following people on Instagram, go to Utah UFO Fest on Instagram. We do have a very small Twitter account that's not growing very fast. That seems to be our slowest. But any of those channels, you can easily contact us through the contact form on the Utah UFO Fest, and I do check that.
That's great. And if people want to contact you about orbs or some of your experiences, how do they do that?
Like I said, if you contact me on Facebook, that allows me to vet some people because I've got some crazy people, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So yes. I don't mind sharing my phone number, but I would probably recommend people take the first step of networking with me on Facebook so I can see who you are and get to know you a little bit before, so I don't have some strangers. Like, I've had a few of those come out of the woodwork in this past year, so I was like, you know what, I need to start being a little more cautious.
Right. Nathan, I want to thank you so much for being on with you tonight. I think you gave a great interview, and I would love to have you back, especially one more time before the festival, which I definitely think I will do my best to attend next year and keep up with you and what's going on with that. Before we go, I just want to let you know you're listening to Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com. We will be back tonight with Dave Scott after the Concrete Paracon and after his long drive. We are going to be back next week, and Eric Markham and I are going to be doing basically a nerdy, even when we normally would do a psychic Cosmic Passport Psychic Sunday, because Paisley is going to be out of town. So Eric and I are going to get nerdy next Sunday. We hope that's okay with all of you. Until then, all of you take care of yourselves. Look at the sky. Find sky to look at. Go outside. Look for orbs. Do your spiritual work and your astral travel and your remote viewing. Be on your path and love yourself on your path, because we love you for being you on your path as individuals. And it's so nice to have met so many of you this weekend in Concrete, Washington. This is Elizabeth Anglin signing off. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
Little brother wants to make headlines. unauthorized. Everyone's got an electric eye, where the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.